The road is already there, lying across the countryside with the quiet certainty of something measured long ago and then left to do its work. It does not hurry, it does not need to. A stone road can seem almost still even when feet pass over it, even when carts move along it, even when weather settles on it and lifts away again. In pale morning light or under a dull afternoon sky, it remains a long line drawn through fields, over slight rises, and down toward lower ground where water must be guided aside. Around it the land is ordinary in the calmest way. There are open stretches where grasses bend lightly, patches of cultivated ground, low banks, scattered trees, and the distant shape of a town that seems less important than the road leading to it. The road belongs to all of these places without fully belonging to any one of them. It joins one settlement to another, one field to another, one river crossing to a port, one market to a military center, and then goes on beyond that, as if the joining itself matters more than the names at either end. It helps to begin close at hand, stone underfoot, packed layers beneath, the slight slope from the center toward the edges, a ditch where rainwater can gather and move away instead of lingering. These are quiet decisions, practical and repeated, and they give the road its calm endurance. A road such as this was not simply worn into being by chance. It was planned, set out across wide territories with intention, so that movement could be steadier, more reliable, more easily measured. The long straight line was not always absolute, because hills, streams, and the shape of the ground had their own say, but the preference for directness remains easy to feel. Even now the eye follows the route ahead and senses that someone once stood here and thought carefully about distance. Before stone was laid, there were other things to hold in the mind: a measuring rod, a length of cord, stakes placed in the ground. The patient work of looking across a field and deciding where a line should go. Surveying belonged to this first quiet labor. A few simple instruments, carefully used, could hold direction across a field, along a ridge, over a broad and gentle incline. The work was not loud. It was a matter of sighting, aligning, checking again, and letting measured distance settle into the landscape before any heavy material arrived. In this way the road was present first as intention, then as marks, then as a path of disturbed earth, and only later as a firmer surface underfoot. The land had to be read in a patient way: slope, firmness, wet ground, a shallow rise, a place where water preferred to gather, a place where it naturally moved away. The line was admired when it could be kept, but it was not a line drawn in ignorance. It was a line tested against the ground. High places were cut back when needed, low places were raised. Hollows were eased and rises softened, not always dramatically, often just enough. Soil moved from one place to another, loose places were compacted. The bed of the route was prepared so that weight would rest evenly and water would not linger where it could slowly loosen the work. Under the visible surface there could be more than one layer, each with its own task. Larger stones below for firmness, smaller material above to settle and bind, then a surface suited to the place and the use. In one region there might be fitted paving stones, in another compacted gravel or broken stone. Not every road looked the same. Some were broad and formal near important centers. Some were plainer in the countryside, yet many shared familiar principles: prepare the ground, support the weight, guide the water, mark the route, maintain the line. Water was one of the quietest and most constant concerns. A stone road lasts best when rain is invited to leave it, so the surface might be slightly raised or gently cambered so that water moved toward the edges. Alongside, ditches could carry it away. Beneath, layers of material helped keep the upper surface from sinking into softer ground. Drainage is not dramatic to look at, yet it gives the road much of its long life. A dry road remains itself. A wet road slowly forgets its shape. There is a quiet satisfaction in that layered construction. First the earth is shaped, then rougher material, then smaller stone, then the surface that receives the daily passing of sandals, hooves, wheels, and rain. Under the visible line lies another line, and under that another, each one contributing to the firmness above. Durability is often hidden in this way. It is not only the topmost stone that endures, but the arrangement beneath, the grading, the drainage, the compacted steadiness that keeps the surface from failing too quickly. The tools behind all this were ordinary in their own time: measuring rods, cords, sighting devices, picks, shovels, baskets, hammers. Their importance came from repetition more than from novelty. The same motion clears, lifts, checks, places, tamps, and checks again. A ditch is deepened by degrees. A foundation spreads outward from the center line. A stone is turned until it sits more securely. The long line is not imposed all at once, it is accumulated. And because it was accumulated, it could also be inherited. Some later routes followed earlier Roman alignments, not always because anyone wished to honor the past, but because a useful line through the landscape remains useful. Once a route has found the firm crossing, the manageable slope, the sensible approach to a settlement, it leaves behind a habit of arrangement. Earth remembers in its own way. So do fields, hedges, parish boundaries, lanes, and modern roads that seem merely practical. The old measured distance can continue under new names. Along the route, measured distance became visible in stone. A milestone stood by the roadside, upright and plain in its usefulness, giving shape to travel by marking how far one had come or how far remained. The road could then be understood not only as a visible strip across the land, but as an ordered sequence of intervals. One marker, then another farther on, one known point, then the next. In this way, travel became less formless. The countryside, broad as it was, acquired a rhythm of nearness and farness that could be read from stone. Near some of these routes there were places arranged for stopping, modest and practical, tied to the rhythm of movement rather than to display. They sat beside the route as part of its working life, receiving those who passed along the measured distance between towns and fields and larger centers. A way station can be imagined first as a nearness to the road. Before walls or roofs are considered, there is placement. It stands where the day's progress can be divided into portions that suit weather, animals, goods, and the ordinary limits of the body. So the road is not only a line crossing open ground, it also gathers small settled places around itself. A doorway turned toward the route, a patch of compacted earth where wheels have rested, a trough holding still water, a bench or ledge worn smooth by repeated use. These are quiet additions to the larger work, and they belong to the same habit of arrangement. Distance is measured, then inhabited. The road itself remains the main presence, but these smaller structures gather near it like quiet notes beside a line of text. A yard, a shelter, a stable corner, a simple room where movement can ease without fully ending. The milestone gives one kind of order, plain and upright. The station gives another. One tells how far, the other allows a pause within that distance. It is easy with roads from this older world to think first of armies or emperors, but the countryside softens that habit. Here the road is less spectacle than surface, less proclamation than routine. It carries grain, tools, messages, household goods, official business, and the repeated needs of ordinary travel. It links towns, farms, ports, and military centers in a wide system of movement, though out in the countryside this larger purpose can feel very quiet. One might simply notice that the road continues, that it keeps its level where it can, that it rises and falls with moderation, that it carries traffic without needing to explain where all of it belongs. A cart moves from field to town. Another road leads onward toward a river crossing. Elsewhere the same line, or another like it, reaches a military center, then continues beyond that purpose as well. The road links many kinds of places without changing its own nature very much. It does not become more dramatic because one destination is a market and another a fort. It remains a prepared way across land. In the countryside, this work becomes almost modest. There are no grand announcements in a ditch cut neatly along one side or in a cambered surface that sheds rain. Yet these are the things that allow the road to go on being a road. A long line over open land can seem simple when seen from a distance. Up close it is a collection of small corrections, many of them repeated so often that they become nearly invisible. A rut filled, a shoulder firmed, a culvert cleared. The work does not need novelty, it asks only for return. Much of the road's life is made from repetition. A section is checked, then checked again on another day. Loose stones are noticed. Edges are kept clear where grass leans too far inward. Water is watched because water is patient and always looking for the lower place. The surface may differ from one district to another, with local stone, local soil, a different breadth, a gentler or firmer crown, yet the practical habits remain familiar. Ground is judged, slope is considered, drainage is respected. The way is kept passable by the same calm acts done many times. Days accumulate in this manner. Hooves pass, sandals pass, wheels pass. Rain falls and is let aside. Sun dries the surface again. A verge is trimmed back and later it grows again. Even where roads differ in finish or width, there is often a shared sense of what a road must do if it is to endure ordinary use. It must keep its line, it must keep its drainage, it must spread weight across prepared ground. It must continue to be itself under repetition. Around the line, the countryside settles into its own patient arrangement. The road does not stand alone for long. It gathers a ditch where water can move away without hurry, a bank where grass takes hold, a field boundary that learns the habit of running near it for a while. Beyond that there may be tilled ground, pale in dry weather and darker after rain, or pasture where the surface is softer and less exact than the laid course beneath the feet. The road remains firmer than the land beside it, but not separate from it. It belongs to the same slope, the same weather, the same slow turning of use from season to season. Sometimes the road rises slightly on an embankment, enough to keep it firm above wetter ground. Sometimes it narrows in feeling as hedges or banks come closer. Sometimes it opens wide again, crossing a plain where the eye can travel almost as far as the route itself. Trees may gather at one side and leave the other open. A stream may require a slight adjustment, a culvert, a bridge, or a firmer embankment. Yet even where the road adapts, it keeps something of its original intention. The countryside perspective makes all of this quieter. The road is still part of a wide system, still linked in the larger sense to towns and ports and centers of administration, but those distant connections do not need to press forward. Here, what matters is the immediate company the road keeps. Grasses lean toward its edges. Rainwater finds the ditch and leaves the surface passable. Hooves, sandals, cartwheels, and later boots all repeat a similar motion over the same firm ground. The old work becomes legible through repetition, not through spectacle, but through the soft insistence of use. Time moves there without needing to announce itself. It passes over the same road in thin layers, as lightly as dust, as steadily as water finding the ditch at the roadside. The road remains a road whether the air is cool or warm, whether the fields beside it are newly turned or left in rough grass. Its surface receives each season in a similar way. A little damp darkens the stone, dry weather pales it. Fine grit gathers in shallow places and is carried away again. The measured intervals stay where they were set, even while the look of the land changes around them. What the road connected could change slowly over time. A town might grow busier for a while and then settle into a smaller rhythm. A field might be divided differently, planted differently, bordered by another fence line. A river landing might receive fewer goods than before, while another place farther off becomes more useful. A military center, once important to the pattern of movement, might become simply another place beside the route, its earlier purpose fading into the background. Yet the road, with its measured spacing and deliberate course, could continue to serve movement even when the reasons for movement had shifted. This is one of the quiet qualities of such roads. They were laid out to link many kinds of places across wide territories, and in doing so they often became steadier than the arrangements they first supported. Towns, fields, ports, and centers of administration all had their seasons of use. The road had a different season. Its season was endurance. It continued under carts, under sandals, under hooves, under later feet that no longer named the route in the same way. It continued as a practical surface and also as a habit of direction, a remembered way across the land. Some later roads and lanes followed those same alignments. A route laid down in one age offered such a sensible passage across the countryside that another age found little reason to abandon it. The line had already been chosen with care. It had crossed firmer ground where possible, met slopes in manageable ways, and held to a course that made practical sense over distance. So another track might settle onto the old one, or a later lane might follow near it, bending only where new boundaries asked for a small adjustment. The Roman line did not always remain visible in the same surface, but it could remain present as direction, as route, as the quiet persistence of an older decision. This does not mean every stretch looked unchanged. The countryside rarely keeps one appearance for long. Grass thickens at the margins, soil slips a little from a bank, a ditch silts and is cleared and silts again. Stones are reset, removed, or buried by degrees, but the work beneath the changes can still be felt. A road is not only what lies on top. It is also the settled intention below, the graded bed, the drained edges, the line chosen through the land. Time passes over these things, and they answer by remaining useful a little longer than expected, then longer still. Repetition over time becomes a kind of memory in the land. A route used daily settles into expectation. People come to know where it rises slightly, where it crosses firmer ground, where a milestone appears, where a stopping place can be found. The road is no longer only built, it is inhabited by routine. Later generations may inherit this habit without inheriting every original arrangement around it. A town may shrink, a station may disappear, a field boundary may move, yet the old alignment can remain persuasive. This is one of the gentlest kinds of survival, not a complete preservation, not a perfect exposure, but a continuing preference in the landscape. The line remains in a parish boundary, in a farm track, in a modern road that seems almost too direct for the surrounding fields. Sometimes the old layers are near enough to touch. Sometimes they are sensed through the way the ground behaves, through a slight rise, a strip that dries sooner after rain, a route that stays level where another would wander. Near the road, the spaces of stopping seem to grow out of the same practical thought as the road itself. A line has been carried across the land, and beside that line, at intervals, there are places where movement can ease without fully ending. The road remains firm and deliberate, while just beyond it a yard, a shelter, a stable corner, or a simple room receives the slower part of travel. Nothing here needs grandeur. The countryside keeps everything at a workable scale. A station beside such a road may have changed many times without losing its relation to the route. Walls repaired, roof renewed, yard widened or narrowed, uses altered according to season and need. The road outside continues to organize these changes. Even when one arrangement passes and another takes its place, the line remains useful. In this way, the road often outlasts the pattern of life first built around it. The rooms nearest the route belong to this plain usefulness. A storeroom, a sleeping space, a place for tools, a place where animals are tended, a place where food is prepared without ceremony. These are not separate from the road's history, they are its edges made habitable. Surveying and grading may have determined the line, but repeated stopping gives it texture. The road is not only crossed and counted. It is approached, left, rejoined, it has thresholds. A room from that world is often easiest to imagine through tools, light, and the pace of hands. Perhaps a table with worn edges, perhaps pegs or shelves holding implements whose shapes are plain from much handling. Light from a doorway or high opening falling across dust, timber grain, and the smoother places on wood where hands have often rested. Outside, the road continues beyond the threshold. Inside, measured distance may appear in another form, in rods, cords, marked surfaces, habits of counting, or simply in the practiced spacing of work. The room and the road belong to the same order. Both are made calm by repetition. The older world feels close through simple things: weight, surface, grain, repeated motion. A basket of stone lifted and set down, a tamping tool rising and falling, a line sighted across open land, the scrape of grading, the carrying away of loosened soil, the placing of one layer over another, each with its own purpose, each helping the whole remain steady through weather and use. None of this needs to become grand in order to feel lasting. It is enough that the motions were regular and that their regularity entered the ground. Historical calm often lives there in repeated work that has long since become ordinary. To measure, to align, to lift, to place, to tamp down, to walk the length once more and see whether it sits true. Repetition does not empty the scene, it steadies it. The line across the countryside is not only an idea of travel, it is the settled result of many modest actions, each one small enough to disappear into the next. The practical world leaves practical traces. The grain of wood on a handle, the cool face of a milestone in morning shade, the uneven smoothness of a road worn by passing, a little rise underfoot where the route still holds itself above the softer margin, a threshold worn by many arrivals and departures, a marker standing with its face more weathered than before, but still upright enough to keep company with measured distance. The workers are gone, yet the set of the stones remains. As the day lowers, these things seem easier to imagine than to count. The ditch darkens first, the surface holds a little less light, the marker stands in a softer outline, the line remains, though the eye no longer follows it so far. What stays nearest is the feeling of practical care. Water led aside, ground made level enough, layers resting on layers, distance given a marker, the route carried onward by many small exact motions. A road is often remembered first as direction. Before any single stone is counted, before any layer is named, there is the sense of a line continuing with quiet certainty. It crosses a field, enters a stand of trees, reappears beyond them, and keeps its spacing as if distance were something that could be laid down and left in place. In this way, the older world can feel close enough to touch. Not because everything survives, but because one surface does, one alignment does, one patient choice about where to go remains visible under weather and grass. There is something calm in that kind of survival. The wider world may change its uses, its boundaries, its names, yet one ordinary task continues to show itself through the same motions. Water still seeks the lower side, feet still prefer firmer ground, a cart, in any century, rolls more easily where the grade has already been considered. The old work receives these small continuations without needing to be restored to all its first sharpness. It only keeps offering what it was made to offer: passage, bearing, a steadier way across uneven land. Milestones may wear down, their faces may soften until letters become difficult to read, yet even then they remain companions to measured distance. They stand, or once stood, not as dramatic monuments but as practical pauses in the landscape, giving shape to travel by dividing it gently. A road between markers becomes easier to imagine than an empty expanse. The land is not merely crossed, it is portioned into calm intervals, one stone then another farther on, one known stretch then the next. By now the traces are enough: stone, grain, weight, and the repeated motion once given to them. The countryside holds them without strain, the road lies where it lies, the markers stand where they can, the old work does not ask to be completed again. It only rests in its worn form, still arranging the land in small, durable ways. The light lowers a little further, and what remains easiest to notice is not any single occasion of travel, but the ordinary presence of made things: a table with its broad top, a tool with a smoothed handle, a small scatter of grit that has worked its way into wood grain and stone seams. Outside, the road keeps its place in the land with the same untroubled certainty. It does not need movement upon it to be itself. It is enough that it lies there, holding its course through the fields, holding distance in a form that can be walked, touched, and seen. In such dimness, the wider world recedes without vanishing. Towns may be somewhere beyond the rise, fields may open farther off, a port, a market, a military center, all the places once linked by planned routes can remain at the edge of thought, quiet and far enough away to lose their sharp outlines. What stays near is the practical middle ground between hand and earth, a roadbed slightly raised. A margin where water can pass away, stones set with enough care that weather meets resistance rather than welcome. Inside, if there is a workshop or storeroom nearby, it too becomes simpler as the light thins. Tools lose their fine edges and keep only their useful shapes: a handle darkened by touch, a measuring rod leaned against a wall, a basket that once carried stone fragments or packed earth. The room from the past is easiest to hold this way, not crowded with action, but settled into a few surfaces and the quiet evidence of use. Grain in wood, dust on a ledge, weight in iron. Outside again, the road continues without asking attention. It passes a field boundary, a stand of low trees, a shallow dip where drainage mattered, then rises almost without effort. The spacing along it is patient. One portion follows another. One known stretch gives way to the next. Even when no marker is in sight, the habit of measured intervals seems to remain in the road's very manner, as if the route has learned to divide itself into calm portions. As the scene grows dimmer, materials begin to outlast explanation. Stone matters more than statement, slope matters more than plan. The faint, pale band of road across darker ground says enough. It says that someone once measured here, and graded here, and laid one thing upon another until endurance became ordinary. It says that repeated work can become so settled in the land that later generations may follow it almost without noticing, taking the old alignment because it is already there, already sensible underfoot and wheel. So the old world narrows kindly to what it can still hold. A road, distance held in intervals, a line resting through the countryside like a thought kept steadily. The hand is gone, yet the smoothing of the handle remains. The workers are gone, yet the set of the stones remains. The reasons for travel have changed many times, and some have faded completely, but the route keeps a mild coherence through all that passing. It is only a road in the countryside, and that is enough. Now even the larger shapes begin to soften. The edges of the room settle. The field beyond becomes one quiet breadth. The road, still slightly raised, still a little firmer than the earth beside it, continues into air that has lost most of its detail. What remains is rhythm more than scene. Stone after stone, stretch after stretch, distance held along the old way, and then held again. A tool rests where light can find one edge of it. Its shape is plain. Wood worn smooth by a hand, iron dulled by use, a weight that belongs naturally to lifting and setting down. Nothing about it asks to be admired. It is enough that it fits the work. In such small fitness, an older world comes close. A bench, a handle, a length of cord, a measuring rod leaning where it was last placed, and the pale drift of daylight across dust. The pace of hands is there even when the hands themselves are not. One motion follows another in the mind as steadily as footsteps along the road. Outside, the road keeps its mild firmness. The crown of it lifts water away almost without display. The side ditches, shallow and practical, receive what the weather gives. Beneath the upper surface lie other layers, quieter still, each one doing its part without ornament. Broken stone, packed earth, the labor of leveling, the patience of grading. The road does not need to announce this. It simply continues to hold. Near such a road, ordinary tasks continue without needing a larger stage. A stone is checked and set more firmly. A rut is noticed and filled. Water is guided away. The edge is kept clear. At a stopping place, someone lifts a vessel, folds a cloth, brushes dust from a threshold, straightens what has shifted a little. The wider world may contain many destinations, but it can remain very quiet while one ordinary task goes on through the same small motions. And because it was done again and again, it became ordinary. The older world remains touchable through what endures nearest the hand and nearest the foot. The grain of wood, the cool face of stone, the uneven smoothness of a worn surface, a little rise underfoot where the route still holds itself above the softer margin, distance lingering in the mind like evenly spaced marks. The road itself becoming less a statement than a presence. Now the room grows quieter still. The tools lose detail first, then keep only outline. Light rests on the threshold and does not move very far. Beyond it, the road lies pale against darker ground. Its line is softened by distance, though not erased. A marker stands somewhere along it, not sharp now, only part of the roadside calm. The work that made it and the work that kept it settle together into one continuous impression. Stone placed on stone, water led away, distance counted, the same motions returning until they seem as natural as weather. Nothing more is required of the scene than this gentle persistence. Weight without strain, surface without glare, a route through the countryside, still faintly raised, still sensible, still there. And then even the line begins to rest. The fields are broad and untroubled. The road passes through them with the patience of something made to last and then left to be ordinary. The markers, the tools, the ditches, the layers below the surface, all of it settles into a single hush of usefulness. Stone keeps its coolness, distance keeps its measure. The line keeps going, though there is no need to follow it far. It is enough to know that it continues. Quietly, over the ground, through the dim countryside, along the old road.